All right, let's jump right in. The source for this explainer is a pretty wild lecture by a guy named Ian R. Crane, and he puts forward this really fascinating, maybe a little unconventional, idea about human consciousness. Basically, he argues that modern society is this super sophisticated program, and it's designed to keep us small, to limit our potential. But, and this is the hopeful part, he says a global awakening is happening right now to break us all free. So he kicks things off with a little experiment, something you've probably seen before. It's that spinning dancer illusion. Now take a look. Which way do you see her turning? Because, depending on the direction, the claim is that it can tell you which side of your brain is running the show at this very moment.
Okay, so here's the breakdown according to the source. If you see her spinning clockwise, that's your left brain, the logical, analytical, list-making part of you. But if she's going counterclockwise, well, that's your right brain, the creative, intuitive, big picture side. And this is where it gets really interesting. The whole argument of the lecture is that our society, our entire world, has been set up on purpose to lock us into that left brain way of thinking, pretty much all the time.
And that idea, that's what brings us to the first big piece of this explainer, what the source calls the diagnosis. It's this theory about what it's like to be human right now, and the idea is that we are essentially trapped. Trapped in something he calls a left brain prison. So what is this prison? Well, it's the world we see every day, right? It's a reality where we're constantly pushed to define ourselves by our jobs, by the stuff we own, by our status. I mean, think about it. You meet someone new, and what's one of the first things you ask them? So, what do you do? We've learned to identify ourselves with our job title, with our little role in the giant machine. And that's when the source asks this really pointed question. Isn't it kind of weird that we define who we are by the very thing that, in his view, enslaves us? Our identity gets all tangled up in the system that's holding us back. So the big question is, if this prison is real, how does it stay standing? How is it maintained? Well, that's where the mechanism of programming comes in.
Okay, so this brings us to part 2, the mechanism. We're going to look at the specific tools the source claims are being used to keep this whole system running, to keep that left brain in charge, keep us focused on stuff, and, to push down that deeper, more intuitive part of ourselves.
And it's quite a list. We're talking about everything from subliminal advertising that's designed to make us feel insecure to pharmaceuticals and even chemicals like fluoride in our water, which the source alleges are meant to kind of deaden our spiritual side. The main point here is that it's not just one thing. It's this whole interconnected system of control.
The source really hones in on the marketing industry as a major player in this. The argument is that these ad campaigns are basically weapons. They are precision engineered to hit a bullseye on our deepest fears and insecurities, always hammering home that message, you're not good enough. But hey, you can buy the solution from us.
And to really drive this point home, the source pulls this jaw-dropping quote from a top advertising exec. It's presented as this rare glimpse into the mindset behind the curtain, a mindset that seems to value being effective over pretty much anything else. From there, the lecture pivots and applies the same critical lens to the world of pharmaceuticals. Yeah, pulling from the philosopher Rudolf Steiner, the lecture suggests that even some medical treatments are part of this system, designed to keep our consciousness glued to the physical world. The example given is Ritalin, which is described as putting a chemical kasha, like a chemical straitjacket, on kids, on their developing minds. The interpretation here is that it's a way to stamp out their natural, vibrant energy before it can really flourish. And then the focus zooms out to the bigger social structures. Take a look at this poster for the EU. The lecture points out how the Parliament building is intentionally modeled after the Tower of Babel. And look at the people. They're shown as these uniform blockheads. The source interprets this as a pretty blatant symbol of this whole control system, where the masses have their individuality and potential squashed right from the get-go. Okay, so after painting this pretty bleak picture of control, the whole narrative takes a sharp turn, because the source argues that this system, it's starting to crumble. And that brings us to part 3, the escape. So why is it failing? Well, according to the lecture, it's because of something totally unexpected, a spontaneous global awakening of consciousness. And, this isn't presented as some new age fantasy. The source points out that even a mainstream political scientist like Zbigniew Brzezinski was talking about this exact thing decades ago. But the lecture makes it clear, this awakening isn't just about politics. It's happening on a much deeper level, on the level of consciousness itself. So, to back this up, the source brings up this incredible phenomenon called cellular memory. And it tells the story of a woman named Claire Sylvia. She had a heart and lung transplant. And right after the surgery, she started noticing, weird things, new cravings, new behaviors that just weren't her. It turns out her donor was an 18-year-old kid who loved beer and Kentucky Fried Chicken, which were, you guessed it, her exact new cravings. Her own daughter even told her she was walking differently, like a man. So the lecture uses stories like this to make a powerful point. What if we, our consciousness, our memories, our essence, aren't just locked up inside our skulls? And the source even finds evidence for this in the heart of neuroscience itself. It tells the story of Jill Bolt Taylor, a neuroanatomist, a brain scientist, who had a massive stroke that completely shut down her left hemisphere. And you'd think that would be terrifying, right? But she describes it as pure bliss, an immersion into this boundless, peaceful state. The lecture frames this as a first-hand scientific account of what it's like to live purely in that right brain reality.
So, all these examples, from transplant patients to brain scientists, are presented to show that this shift in consciousness isn't just a theory, it's possible. And that leads us to the final part of this explainer, the call to action. Because according to the source, this awakening isn't something you just sit back and watch on the news. It's not a spectator sport. It needs you. It needs us to actively participate.
For this, the lecture looks to the wisdom of the indigenous Q'ero people of Peru. And they have this beautifully simple 3-step process for how we can all be a part of this change. Step 1, act. You have to physically do something to help create the world you want to see. Step 2, visualize. You have to actually see that new reality in your mind's eye. And step 3, which is maybe the hardest but most important part, detach. You have to let go of your specific vision, your attachment to the outcome, and trust that something even better than you imagined can come through. And what's the whole point of this? Well, the ultimate goal is to get the ego, that loud, bossy gatekeeper of the left brain, to just step aside for a minute. It's about learning to quiet that constantly chattering, fearful, logical mind so that our full potential, that intuitive, connected, powerful part of us, has room to show up. Which brings us full circle, right back to the title of the original lecture. It's not about going crazy. It's a call to action. We have to literally get out of our minds, out of that left brain prison, so we can finally step into a much bigger, more connected reality. So, the source leaves us with this one last really provocative question. What if it's right? What if human consciousness isn't just some passive thing that watches the world go by? What if we're actually active participants in creating reality? Forget being a cog in the machine. Think about being a co-creator of the whole thing. If you really, truly believed that, what would you do differently, starting right now?